the 16th of August 2022. Welcome. We got so much to cover and only a couple of hours to do it. My goodness. The worst thing can happen to Earth was this group. The worst thing that happened to the seniors in Japan was Japan. Seniors urged to eat Fukushima rice to help the farmers and protect young people. This is the Japan Times, which is the Japanese government, basically. So we got a poll. Did the Japan Times commit a crime by encouraging seniors to eat lethal radioactive food to allegedly protect the young? And think about how they look at the seniors in the government in Japan. 60 and older should be prepared to die at the Fukushima plant. Now, they're not talking about 60 and older nuclear scientists or nuclear professors or et cetera, et cetera. They're talking about the people of Japan. Not themselves, of course, but... So why would you want a power plant on your planet with those types of attributes is a question I can't quite wrap my mind around. Top Japanese official, let the elderly hurry up and die. He was the same guy who claimed a couple of months later he admired the Nazis. He had done that publicly and then retracted it. It was on his Twitter, I think it was. Japan government did not reveal plutonium-241, and the doses was 50 times higher than the total of the other 3 plutonium isotopes that were mentioned. Minamisoma City, we've seen 10,000 becquerels a kilogram in the soil. And you want to multiply it by 68 to get a square meter, where the children stand up and spin around with their arms out. Tokyo neighbor cesium, is Chiba? Yeah, Chiba. And the food's banned in Chiba for a decade by 55 countries. That's just 20 kilometers from Tokyo with 36 million people. The Chiba incinerating dust is your garbage incinerator at 70,000 becquerels a kilogram. They're only acknowledging cesium. That should be illegal because they've been doing this for so long. It's 100% crime to only acknowledge cesium. But to purposely sell the product. So the seniors urged to eat the Fukushima rice to help the farmers and protect the young people. So if the rice was contaminated with cyanide, do you think they would sell it? If the rice is contaminated with Ebola, they won't sell it. But if it's a dirty bomb, they'll sell it. Not only that, this is the major media in Japan. It's like CBC in Canada or CBS in America. It's before that headline came out, that was unthinkable to even suggest something like that. To actually print it and post a number where you can order it by fax has to constitute a crime of just... Because how many... There's 36 million people just in Tokyo alone, right? Farmers, by the way, were required to check the radiation in the rice themselves. No universities were doing that. No government agencies done that. That should terrify you, just that statement on its own. If if you can't trust them to do the job, then what's the point, right, of these institutions having any kind of accuracy whatsoever? If the level of the rice, or if the level of radioactive cesium exceeds a stunning 500 becquerels per kilogram, they're banned from selling it, but they encouraged them to mix it with rice that wasn't as contaminated. And then if the numbers were below 500, it was okay to sell it. And you got to worry about this because they'll do it in your own countries. And not only that, they ship it everywhere, particularly Canada, because that was the only country who would take it for 10 years. And they started taking it after 93 days. Just that part of the story is just, I'll never fly a flag again of Canada. We don't have a country for sure. We don't. It's not even safe to go to the supermarkets for the last 11 years. Next year, the year after this, they dropped the level down to 100 becquerels a kilogram, which is still not safe, unfortunately. Tokyo Senior is waging an individual effort to get elderly people to eat the rice grown in a nuclear wasteland to help the local farmers, which should have been arrested instead of helping them, struggling with rumors that their crops are radioactive, which of course it is, and to make sure the grain isn't consumed by a more vulnerable younger generation. It's just like, wow, that could even exist. That somebody on the planet thought that way is just wow. The fact that wasn't challenged by any of the other medias is stunning. The elderly must eat the Fukushima rice, the Japan Times on Monday. The elderly are believed less prone to radiation than the young people. So it's based on that the radiation takes a long time before the adverse side effects typically show up. But that would be from a plume, a small plume. Consuming it all the time is a whole different, it's a whole different category of evil. And the elderly are more susceptible because they have weaker immune systems. Children too, of course, children are the most vulnerable to radioactive consumption of any way, right? Whether it's through showering, because you absorb liters of water, or through laundry even, right? But to actually sell it in your supermarkets and doing what was done here, just you never thought that would happen pre-Fukushima nuclear meltdown. That's not conceivable to a normal society, that they would poison people and suggest that the people who built the country should sacrifice themselves so the degenerates can pretend nothing happened. The orders handed by Hira have amounted to 1,700 kilograms. Wow. About 700 kilograms, 1,400 pounds, was bought by elderly care facility in Tokyo. So if you consume a lot of it, you have all kinds of illnesses. There's up to 1,800 illnesses. 700 kilograms. That's a minimum amount compared with Fukushima's 240,000 tons annual rice yield. 240,000 tons. First off, it's not just the Fukushima prefecture. There's 14 prefectures where the food is banned. So when you start adding up how much food they're producing in 14 prefectures that are accepted as being incredibly radioactive, That's a genocide machine, incredibly overdrive. 240,000 tons. It's just a fraction, by the way. 240,000 times, we'll go nice and go 2,000 tons, but it's actually metric, right? Is 500 million pounds. 500 million pounds just from a single prefecture that they admit to. It's much more than that, by the way. You're looking at a couple of billion from, say, just rice, not talking about the other product, and they're these are the bread baskets of the Asian country we're talking about. So 14 prefectures were banned by 55 countries for a decade, and like Boris Johnson, where he shook hands with Japan at a private meeting and all restrictions was lifted, the EU and America done that last September. So think about how many people are actually poisoning this way, and how the nuclear industry is the people responsible for it. It's not just Japan. The nuclear industry has participated in this extinction of humanity by food. It's just, why are they allowed to do this? They got to be held accountable. That's the only way forward. They got to stop doing that, and they got to be prosecuted retroactively for the last 11 years, or you have no future. He said his reason for doing this is not only because he wants to help the farmers, but because he wants to make sure the elderly eat as much Fukushima rice as possible to prevent children from eating the deadly food. Instead of putting it in a dump, which is what the poll should have been tonight, really, should the radioactive food be not grown in the first place and that stuff that grows be put in a nuclear dump? Or should it be sold on market to help the farmers? This is a ludicrous question, by the way. This is not a question. There is only one obvious answer. It shouldn't be grown, and it should be put in a nuclear dump where it is, so it can't harm people. To suggest that people eat poison to help the farmers is just what? What kind of Twilight Zone is this? Let's have a referendum worldwide on that question. What do you think the answer is going to be? Kill nuclear, kill it right now, kill it, kill it, kill it. Every second blog each day will be saying, kill the nuclear industry with everything you got right now. It's so evil, I got nothing to compare it to. We don't have an example to say, hey, well, look, we've done this and they were prosecuted. This is like the whole system hates our guts and themselves and their children's. There are no regulations obliging restaurants and makers of boxed lunches in Japan to list the origin of the rice, which could lead to children eating the Fukushima rice. Like, every facet of this screams stupid as, how do you get that stupid? I thought Japanese were smart, but obviously they're the stupidest on the planet. Therefore, why don't the elderly whose potential for suffering health damage, there's 1,800 illnesses before cancers, is lower than it is for youths, eat all of the Fukushima rice? You know, if you actually made a movie on that one story, nobody would believe it. Can you imagine the story came out, the truth came out? Imagine all of these people, how do they go home and look their children in the eye? And how do their children not try to push them in front of a car or something? Airborne radiation near Fukushima nuke plant 2018, still far higher than the government's maximum allowable limits that they raised. How many times? I've lost track a long time ago. So if the airborne radiation near the plant is higher, which stuff you're breathing, hello? Is there anybody left on the planet with a heart? If you want to find heartless people, you go to the nuclear industry, obviously, right? And we got a massive 19 votes. Did the Japan Times commit a crime asking seniors to eat lethal, deadly food from a nuclear wasteland to protect the young? See, that's not an option. I'll show you how crazy the media is. Look, temporary radioactive soil storage site hinders the farmers. And so they picked up 30 to 60 million one-ton bags of rice, radiation, contaminated foliage and soil and everything. It's say 5 rows of traffic and 1-ton trucks right around the planet, bumper to bumper. It's a lot. Farmer harvesting rice. This is a newspaper picture and story. Farmers harvesting rice in rice paddies in Fukushima Prefecture. Across from the farmer who's harvesting rice, right alongside of 1-ton bags, another rice paddy in the foreground, which these are connected by height, right? As a temporary storage site for piles of black plastic bags, 1-ton bags, that only meant to last 2 years, containing radioactive soil. So the media was chastising people for thinking that the food was radioactive. That's what the story was all about. Poor farmers getting a bad reputation because the nuclear industry won't take the bags away. The farmers should be arrested immediately. You don't harvest food at a nuclear dump. That's not rocket science, kids. Children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. This was a study actually because of Chernobyl, right? In Belarus and Ukraine. So 500 becquerels a kilogram. What do you think is going to happen to the kids that are born from the parents that are eating it, for starters? So before Fukushima, 100 becquerels a kilogram was nuclear waste, packed and stored and put on a special site. After 100 becquerels was safe to eat. Well, that's after they dropped it to 100 becquerels. Remember the story earlier at 500 becquerels a kilogram. And here's how illness starts to show up. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now nearly double Japan's average. And excessive weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radiation brain damage. TEPCO sent us people who don't mind dying. So obviously, they're not asking for nuclear scientists, nuclear academics, nuclear students, etc., 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 anybody in the nuclear industry. Tokyo Vice Governor suggested a Fukushima draft. All of Japan must face it. And sales of foreign Geiger counters are banned. This is why Safecast showed up. They built fake Geiger counters and passed them out through the communities to people that wanted to do something and made sure they couldn't actually be effective. Safecast, which is a huge operation right now. They're selling air monitors all over the world. They succeeded in deceiving the whole country. They proved that they're extremely evil, and so now they're all wealthy. In Fukushima Prefecture, 1.4 million becquerels a kilogram in worms' feces. Do you know what a worm does all day? It excretes all day, every day. So we're talking significant nightmarish numbers in the soil that you can't quantify growing food here in a nuclear wasteland. There's zero ways to, because the actual science shows on just tiny amounts, this stuff has a ability to disrupt your immune system permanently. Everything that gets in your body attacks with white blood cells for the rest of your life, which means less red blood cells carrying an oxygen nutrition throughout your body. And the more radiation you're eating, the more your bioaccumulate. Eventually, you got so many white blood cells, that's called leukemia. So, major media, Kyoto News, used the terms hot zones to accurately describe Miyagi, Iwate, Tochigi, not prefectures, not just Fukushima. And that's why the food was banned by 55 countries for over decades. So they couldn't sell it, so they just shipped it to the countries that would take it, and Canada was the first one. So Canada got the brunt of the evilness. So let's see how long they extended my video from last night. Every video after 12 hours gets a little bit longer. This one is the one in the far corner over there. 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 28 seconds. So don't worry about that. Just worry about the 28 seconds. And here's the current video. 35 seconds, so it's 7 seconds longer. So Google, or lobbyists at Google, done something to my video, and this is exactly 12 hours later, the numbers will change. Every video, exactly 12 hours later, and the comment section will show up. Comment section after the video won't show up for 12 hours, and people just get upset with me. Dana, why are you hiding the comments? And they were accusing me of suppressing their comments when I got no control in the context of what Google's doing to me, right? So how many people just got pissed off and left because they thought I was censoring the comments? Probably quite a few. Germany says undecided on nuclear plant extensions. They said that repeatedly in quite a few medias over the last week. But there's all day long, there's this bombardment of media claiming that Germany is going to keep the reactors open. Germany hasn't made that decision at all. In fact, as far as I can tell, they're decided not to. Japan government and TEPCO say solution to pollution is dilution. Helen Caldicott, human trash trader narrative we've heard quite a lot. Helen thinks the fuel pools, that the fake ones are real, right? I'm not going to play the clip tonight, but we play it every week at least once. As planned to dump Fukushima, when media uses the word waste water from a nuclear meltdown, and they don't use the word radioactive, that's not an accident. The Pacific is already contaminated. It's all dumped into the Pacific Ocean. You can't put if you put the stuff we're talking about in the tanks, each tank is 1.4 million sieverts. 1.4 million sieverts, by the way, 3 sieverts is a lethal dose. 1.4 million sieverts is you can't do that. You can't get back on the site. You can't walk over the hoses, for starters. And so if you got all the tanks at the site, which is 750. They say 1,000, but there's actually only 750 if you count the small tanks. They had 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 2014. How many tanks did they fill up in 9 years? When I do the math, it's zero every single time. Japan's non-regulatory agency, nuclear non-regulatory authority, and there's no such thing as a regulatory authority in any nuclear industry that we can find. They're the captured or created captured regulatory agencies, has formally endorsed the controversy planned by TEPCO. So the idea is you blame TEPCO instead of the nuclear industry. Nuclear industry is nowhere to be seen. And you might see the back of their heads once in a while, but they're nowhere to be seen. The non-regulatory agencies don't go to Fukushima, period. The IAEA don't go to Fukushima. They claim they went there, and eventually after 2 days of searching, I found a little tiny 1-minute video. I found some pictures. None of them, all the pictures were the same on every site, and the video doesn't prove they're actually at Fukushima. Why wouldn't you just do an elaborate video instead of something that leaves you with nothing but suspect? The operator, which is the company's nationalized, so is TEPCO, Japan government. TEPCO went bankrupt the next morning. At the Fukushima Daiichi disease factory, to start dumping more than 1 million tons of radioactive water. If you go into my playlist, you'll see presentations just on the tanks. And what you end up realizing that, first off, the hemorrhaging into the ocean, or even just the environment, this was a 20-day model of the radioactive emissions. Gas, oil, and coal, by the way, don't do that. They only travel maybe 50 or 100 kilometers. Radiation covers the entire planet from the surface, ocean floor, to the upper troposphere and beyond. It's an invisible plume, like a snowstorm, but you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or touch it or feel it or pick it up. And it's pulsing energy. Every one of those atoms is pulsing energy every second, almost at the speed of light. That this is a biological weapon. It covers the whole planet and sterilizes all the species. They disappear in increments over a decade or two. And that's the lower species. That quickly comes up into the food chain. The food chain is broken. And the die-offs, like whales, takes a long time to starve to death because they're so big, so much blubber. They go from 12 inches of blubber to about 3 inches of blubber. But they have leukemia at that stage because they're bioaccumulating it. TEPCO claims is now running out of room to continue storing. And every time you hear the word wastewater, that was only injected about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was called radioactive water. So there was a concerted effort to deceive the population through grammar constantly, right? That was one of the adjustments they had made in the last couple of years. Is running out of room to continue. This is the same narrative several years in a row. Let me see. It's really, the lie is really easy to show the lie. I want to give you another example though, so you can really, hopefully, wrap your mind around this. Because it's actually important, right? Despite the fact that it's just a silly amount of work I do each day. And what have I got, 15 people on my show tonight? Which is amazing, by the way. Bless your hearts. It's censorship, right? It's to discourage other people, saying, that person only got 15 people watching this show. That's going to be garbage, right? That's what that's all about, is censorship. It is what it is. I can't change it. And even if nobody watches, I still have to tell the story. The story is I just want to find some good stuff for you. And like, by the way, this story of dumping in the ocean, they've been doing this constantly to cover up their... They're not trying to come up with solutions is the problem, right? More contaminated water leaks at Fukushima. 290,000 becquerels per cubic centimeter. These are incredible numbers, that's all. And so 22 liters at 6.3 million becquerels of radioactivity leaked. And in 2013, for instance, TEPCO plans to dump the water stored. Now, the Riva, the Alps, the Surrey system, these are 3 water filtration systems. None of them were functional even in 2014. So when the accident originally happened, that first year, that's your vital time, right? The idea of the tanks was to trick you, manipulate you, and deceive you into thinking they didn't poison the oceans. That's all that was about. The unprecedented, this is going to last. Again, this is incredible propaganda to suggest that the tanks are full of 2.2 sieverts per liter materials, because that's the story, see? That's the official numbers when you go back through the documentation back into the day. And the big problem was we have so much information. Sometimes you can't keep up with it, right? You can't find it, remember everything. So 2.2, it's actually 2.2 sieverts, but that's only acknowledging beta. That's not acknowledging gammas, alphas, and neutrons, which is going to be equal. In NAMI, you're looking at 1 sievert doses with the World Health Organization, which is United Nations, and I hate both of them equally, by the way, impossibly high. These organizations are just subsidies of the military-industrial complex, which is UN. Toxic radioactive waste moved from Japan, Fukushima, amid protest today. They had a lot of waste that is extremely radioactive, according to what we're seeing. The story is just coming out in the last 24 hours, that they had moved waste to Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island. And Hokkaido, let me go back and make sure I'm right in that. Stored near Japan's disaster-hit Fukushima nuclear power plant. There must be a different 2 cities with the same name or something. Because that's the northernmost, that's a long way away from Fukushima. And so you're talking about a huge amount of radiation released on the way to Hokkaido, wherever they moved it to, which is allegedly Hokkaido. And toxic and radioactive waste. It's going to take a couple of days before I flush this story out, what's really going on. Because there is quite a few stories showed up tonight that I haven't had a chance to read yet. basically, right, once they accept the waste, it'll be forced up on them again and again, right? And they're aware of that. And so nobody knows what's really going on. We haven't been able to find the documentation. It was like a story yesterday where they said they fixed the roof on a reactor at Fukushima so there was less radioactive water. But they don't tell us which roof they're talking about. Why wouldn't you mention which building, right? It's got to be Unit 1 or Unit 4 or the spent fuel pool or Reactor 6. Because Reactor 4 and Reactor 3 have lost their entire inventories with the detonations and the meltdowns. What are the risks of a nuclear accident at Ukraine's, the biggest nuclear power site in Europe, during a war? Well, the military, Russian military is at the site shooting from the site high-powered weapons. And so if you cut off external power 20 miles away, you're in real trouble, right? If you hit the transformers around the site, you got no time to try anything. It's easy to melt them down. If you cut off the water, you cut off the external power, one or the other, they melt down. If you cut off the external power or the water, then the generators don't matter because you got no water. If you destroy the power source coming in, the generators can't start. And in a war zone, how are you going to get extra fuel? They usually only keep about 10, 12 hours of fuel. They're very huge. These generators are size of massive buildings themselves, right? You got to run a lot of equipment to get the reactor to shut down into safety. And Rafael Grossi, the latest puppet of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is United Nations. I don't know why don't you just say United Nations lapdog? Has described recent shelling at Europe's biggest plant as out of control, extremely serious. Which is, again, this is Twilight Zone, hearing that from the nuclear industry, because normally it's cover up. But, there's these sirens. We had a poll. Would they use the sirens if they had a nuclear release in Russia or in Ukraine's captured or any of their nuclear plants? And I can guarantee you they're not. There's no way to evacuate people in a war zone, see? So the plants are not supposed to be running. And if they melt down, the whole world pays the price, and all the species that happen to make it through Fukushima. The violence amid the war in Ukraine underlines the risk of a nuclear disaster, according to the military-industrial complex, the New World Order, United Nations watchdog. United Nations is what they call the New World Order. Because most people think of the New World Order as a sinister, secretive group, puppet master, so to speak. George Bush openly called the degenerate UN the New World Order.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Which is the military-industrial complex. Nuclear terrorism. Can result in an accident similar to the one in Fukushima. So we've seen nuclear physicists coming out and say, well, it won't be as bad as Chernobyl, but it might be Fukushima, which is meant to make you think that Chernobyl is worse than Fukushima. And I mean, that's despicable as you could possibly get. That's the ultimate and despicable scum to do something like that. This is why we call it the Scumbag Show. Nuclear scumbag, because that's what nuclear is. There's no middle ground ever. They're just scumbags 24/7. They're never nothing but scumbags, everybody in the nuclear industry. That's the norm. We've never come across somebody we said, hey, actually, that's a pretty good person. We've never come across that. It's always like, another scumbag. Surprise, surprise. Russia was preparing, you know what an agent provocateur is? It's where they attack themselves and blame it on the enemy they want at the time, right? It's also, you'll hear it known as a false flag. That's what they're actually talking about. And that was showing up a lot, that last part of the sentence. Self-propelled howitzer outside a nearby town that put a Ukrainian flag on it. It was a Russian, right? So that like it was going to be a false flag is what they're suggesting. Shellings near the high voltage power lines that feed into the nearby nuclear plant. There was shelling near that. If you take it out, the plant starts melting down about 50 minutes later. They have to run on external gas, oil, and coal plants. They need 2 of them dedicated to them. Although officials confirmed there was no radioactive leaks as a result, they disconnected one of the site's reactors. They shouldn't be running. There's a war going on. This is idiotic to have nuclear plants running with a war. It's literally the stupidest thing imaginable to run a nuclear reactor during a war. That's the Darwin Award for that one. So when someone tries to convince you nuclear energy is a promising solution for climate change, that's a degenerate scumbag. But the clean energy option will forever risk a catastrophe. They gotta have 2 gas, oil, or coal plants to run a disease factory, also known as a nuclear power plant. Tabata wave swamped 3 reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi, and radioactive material escaped for 6 days. It's hard to believe somebody said that, isn't it? Radioactive material escaped for 6 days. That model is a 16-day model from France, by the way, of radioactive fallout. That's planet Earth, you see it covering. But how many people think that they were able to stop the radiation after 6 days from this building? Or any of the melted reactors in Japan. They got multiple buildings. That's reactor 3 remains you're looking at. That's the remains of reactor 4. The claim that radioactive material only escaped for 6 days. How do you respond to something so evil? Because have we seen that one before, folks? I can't remember. We've heard some pretty kooky stuff, man, from the nuclear industry. That's way up there. That's he should get a Nobel Prize. That guy, that for evil. They should have a Nobel Prize for evil. Only problem is nuclear scientists are going to get all of them. The United States only opened one reactor since 1996, which was Watts Bar. It took them 42 years to finish it. So it was already old and decrepit by the time they finished the building. The danger is climate change, which is caused by radioactive fallout from 80 years of radioactive fallout. But Fukushima was a pretty big catalyst, and all the fuel pools worldwide hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. Because everything is split in the atom, right? Hello, planet Earth. The UN it's not overseen, it's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is UN. Same as IAEA, the World Health, or UNSCLEAR, or ERPA, or the IPCC, or whatever. They got all these subsidies. You're not allowed to have a conversation unless it's their material. That means you lost your planet, see? And they're incredibly degenerate scum, too. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And those same people wears many pins and hats, by the way, when it comes to radiation. It's disgusting. It can only get to this despicable stage because there's no checks and balances. Which is, because there's no checks and balances, we're forced to be here 5 days a week minimum. The world is at a crossroad. These are degenerate scumbags that put you in the crossroad in the first place. The talk is generating action. The U.S. in April announced $6 billion to prevent more closures of 94 reactors across the 56 plants in the United States. $6 billion is barely enough to rescue one reactor, for God's sakes. It's embarrassing low number. That's not action, that's just, here, take it and go away. Since 2013, 12 U.S. reactors have closed early because of brittleness from the neutron bombardments. And another 11 reactors are scheduled to shut by 2025. Well, like you said, the last one came online was 2016. Took 42 years to complete it. If they're going to replace it, they needed to get started 20 years ago, right? Because it takes forever and ever and ever to build it. A disease factory. And again, like quoting just the same ones over and over and over. The UK in April said it'd build as many as 8 new reactors by 2030. They don't build nothing. France does. France got over half its fleet shut down. It's not even posturing. It's impossible. There's zero possibility the UK is going to build a reactor a year. It's zero. Boris Johnson will just say whatever it takes to get the politicians behind him that he needs. That's one of the ways he does it. In February, before Ukraine was invaded, France's useful idiot, Macron, said the world's second most nuclear-powered country, 56 reactors, supplying 70% of the country's electricity. By the way, over half the fleet is shut down because of corrosion. They were all built at the same time. They have another 6 shut down because of a drought, no rain. And they don't expect that to end. They're importing power from Germany and the United Kingdom who don't have any. To claim that there's 70% of the country and 56 reactors is a blatant lie, a blatant misrepresentation of facts, total deceit and dishonesty. It's easy to see why leaders are attracted to nuclear energy. Yeah, they can shake a hand and screw the country and permanently destroy it by introducing disease factories. The whole industry, the entire industry is predicated upon just lies and deceit and deception all day, every day. If it's impossible to find a single story where they actually tell you the truth, where they're actually honest. It's just like, how could we ever get to this point, and how can we survive this out-of-control monster known as the nuclear industry? How can we have species on the planet in the near future with this lot on it, this lunatic, cowardly chicken neck industry? These people are chicken necks. If you see any of these people walking down the mall or wherever, you're going to say, that's a friggin' weird one there. Look at that, honey. Ho, ho, ho. That's a weirdo. That's what these people are like. They're completely dysfunctional. And if it all goes to shit, they'll go home and kill the wife and the kids, and then they'll run away. That's what they're like, right? They're not human like me or you. They don't have any of those attributes whatsoever. And we can quantify that with documentation. Is the frightening part of all of it. Greenhouse gas-free energy. The biggest Ponzi scam in human history. Two promising developments could make nuclear more appealing. The first is the mini-tart reactors. They could produce 35% more intermediate level waste, 30 times more high level waste, and 5 times more fuel rods than a full-size reactor. Yeah, that's a blessing, said nobody in their right minds. Lower cost, less complex design, takes only 4 years rather than a decade, can be built and shipped. They don't even exist. They barely exist on paper. Safer and don't need nothing to shut down. They produce less waste. All of this is propaganda on a whole different level. Cheaper to decommission. There's nothing they won't. These are used car salesmen. And they see you stood up in the parking lot with a big wad of money in your hand. That's what they're up. That's what they're like, right? And the minute the car backfires, they're going to duck because they figure someone's trying to kill them because they're so evil. The second development is nuclear fusion. They've told some pretty big whoppers in nuclear fusion in the last couple of years, I'll tell you what. Last year's fable of the year was that at 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures, they produced enough electricity, extra electricity than it took to create 150 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures to power a 9-volt battery. Because it's absurd to suggest they were able to figure out there was extra power there would power a 9-volt battery. We ridiculed them for about 2 weeks and I got bored of it. This year they're back with another one. This year they produced enough power, extra power, more than they put into the nuclear fusion to boil 60 jugs of water. These are the smartest people on the planet. They're getting massive amount of money and they don't have to worry about results. Nobody expects them to figure out anything. But the industry just throws money at it for a tax write-off, and because it's nuclear, and that's what nuclear does. If it's evil, they're all in. They're all in. There's no limit on being evil, by the way. In the nuclear industry, they have no limits set whatsoever and what's too evil. There's no such thing in the nuclear industry as, well, that's too evil. The response to anything that we would normally say, that's just too evil, is, hey, I like it. I like it a lot. Let me run it by some guys I know. Aside from producing greenhouse gas-free energy, which, of course, you can't quantify those assertions because it doesn't exist. And there's zero possibility that they can pull that off, by the way, because that's what the research shows, is these are incredibly... The big problem with fusion is it produces so much radioactive water. And radioactive water, because everything that's alive on the planet assimilates water into them readily and easily, it's the worst case scenario for humanity. Again, they can't quantify any of the assertions because it doesn't exist and it ain't going to. Claiming there's no radioactive waste, other radioactive waste produced, this is a blatant, despicable deceit. That's what nuclear does. It's no matter what facet of it, telling the truth doesn't. It's not part of the equation on any circumstances because the results is so evil. Accident that included 3 mile U.S. Of course, Santa Susana was equal to 460 3-mile island meltdowns going off at the same time. But they keep throwing 3 Mile Island at you as if, if you look at Los Alamos or you look at Hanford Nuclear Reservation Site, they make 3 Mile Island look like irrelevant, despite the fact that it wasn't. In fact, they admit at 3 Mile Island, 2 million people got radioactive doses. And you only need a dose a single time of radiation sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones to have complications in the near future that could be life-threatening and long-term will be. Chernobyl, of course, Chernobyl's nothing compared to Mayak. And Fukushima, and blaming, it's all human zero. Well, humans will continue to run all of these. There will be human errors. That's not going to go away. That's not an excuse either, by the way. The fuel pools of all nuclear power plants are still split in the atom. They have no containment. We can't continue. We just can't continue doing that. That has to be stopped and dealt with. We can't have humanity can't have a future with nuclear energy, nuclear power on the planet. No species can survive nuclear power. It will gain traction as an answer for climate change. You can't spell stupid without nuclear, see? Shadows grow longer in Fukushima. They say they got 1,000 tanks. Of course, they said they had 1,000 tanks 2013 each year. Well, they varied, right? 2014, they said they had 1,200. 2017, they said they had 900. In 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, they said they had 1,000 tanks. We can only count 750, no matter how hard you try. This was seen in March of this year, by the way. She said, the 71-year-old said there's no return to her hometown, despite the efforts of the kooky industry to trick her into going back. Going back to Fukushima, which is just 2 kilometers from ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns, is not an option for me, she said. I don't have a reason to relocate to a place with worse living environment. But the government is a lunatic. Go like, what? You're disrespectful. San Onofre. Our national government prominent figures have recently declared support for extending the operating licenses of Diablo Canyon because of climate change. Please pull you over while you speed in climate change. Teacher asks the student why they didn't do their homework. Oh, climate change. Why did you murder your neighbor? Climate change. Yes, boy. Well, there you go. Have a nice day. Totally understandable. Bad accident could have drastically severe multi-generational consequences. Yeah, because these reactors at Diablo Canyon problem, like they knew they were going to close it down, and each time that happens, they refuse to create something that can replace it. So when the time comes for the argument, well, we can't get rid of it, we got nothing to replace it. But they had the money, they had the authority, they had the support of the population, and they refused to do it so that they can booby trap you into keeping the disease factories. It was originally licensed for 20 years. It got an extension for 20 years. The industry, it only exists by deceit and deception, not by having an adult conversation. And they know that. That's how they live their lives, as just scum. Yeah, I'm a scumbag, but I'm a rich scumbag, so therefore that justifies it. I can't keep up with it myself. Nuclear power is the climate superhero, like Spider-Man and the Hulk. Too nervous to wear his cape. There's too many scumbags. Non-carbon, can't keep the lights on. I can't do it to you tonight, I apologize. Japan to Earth, new website launches to help communities achieve development goals in Japan. Japan to Earth. Earth to Japan. Stop growing food in a nuclear wasteland, you piece of shit. It's 1 minute to midnight on the doomsday clock. That's the words of Japan's Prime Minister. Boring Johnson, who's now stepping down as he opened United Nations, the military-industrial complex's climate change conference of parties, Constipated Parties 26, last year in Glasgow in November. And it wasn't November. It started on Halloween, and it ended on the 13th of November, which is appropriate for goblins and ghouls, right? And we done a video each day of the headlines for 13 days. Even a limited nuclear war can kill a third of the world's population. Again, they're going to claim, because we've had nuclear wars, it was called weapons testing. China was at war, India was at war, Pakistan was at war, America was at war, the Soviet Union was at war, and the list keeps going, right? They're blown up nuclear weapons. Britain was over, the United Kingdom went over to Australia, Montebello, Maralinga, and everywhere else, and he would wait for the wind to blow across Australia and set off the bombs. If that's not a nuclear war, what exactly specifically is? They blew up all the oases in the oceans. The Bikini Atoll, they blew it up so much, there's over 1 million square kilometers that are radioactive. Why is the EU championing nuclear energy to secure a greener future? Yeah, no kidding. Because they're evil, and that's what evil does. An unjustified fear of nuclear energy is holding the industry back. I'm not going to do it to you tonight because in response to sanctions on Russia's oil and gas, because that's what they done in February. All the UN countries worldwide put sanctions, And then all of them went into inflation, right? And it didn't harm the people in the industry making a lot of money. It harmed the most vulnerable in each country. Radiation Emergency Management School held in French for the first time. Which, does that really shock anybody? The International Atomic Energy Agency is not supposed to exist. They need to disappear, like the dinosaurs. They are an evil dinosaurs. The IAEA, United Nations, all their subsidies, they meddle in all the countries worldwide that they can meddle in and bully the rest because you have 195 militaries. Too volatile stocks to hold for a decade. That's an interesting, because we've never seen them put it that way before for uranium stocks. Pains of conscience. The motley fool, and we covered at least several hundred of their stories over the last decade. They're disgusting parasites on humanity. Yeah, this story, respite for Japan as tainted water accumulation slows. Tainted water. So when I say the word tainted water, that's the definition of being evil, by the way. So he's holding a glass of water in front of tanks with 1.4 million sieverts in each of them. And he's not even wearing his paper suit like the rest of the useful idiots and victims of society. Varsity. I got no idea why that's there. Oh, that was the guy who wrote Sam Hudson. He was such a degenerate, I was going to show you. He knows nothing about the industry. And he doesn't, right? There he is, there, the degenerate scum. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not going to read the story. There's never been an issue so needlessly divisive as nuclear power, and he scolds and criticizes anybody that criticizes the nuclear industry. He didn't write the story because you got to be really deeply in the nuclear industry to get those nuances, those minutiae, those details, the details. Our fossil fuel interest bankrolling the anti-nuclear energy movement. I'm lucky if I raise $200 a week in an operation where I need at least $2,000 a week, and we need $20,000 a month just to grow. There's nobody, no foundations, no fuel interest bankrolling me. It's just a few individuals that are, through the goodness of their souls, are able to donate and keep the operation moving forward. Strike on Ukraine's captured nuclear plant could result in another Fukushima. That had a bit of traction. But said it does not fear an accident on the scale of Chernobyl. But figures it can be the size of Fukushima. And so what he's trying to do is claim that Chernobyl is bigger than Fukushima. He's a nuclear scientist. A volcano erupted in Iceland again. Is climate change causing more eruptions? They seem to notice sea level rises and falls are equates with volcanoes, is what they're trying to prove. It's the Weather Channel, so the idea of trusting those lots, those lunatic, is just not happening. Putin's danger strike on a nuke plant could release radiation lasting a millennium. Radiation lasts millions of years to pollute every species That's what Fukushima has done, right? Adding more to the mix is a terrible thought. The big thing we see with anybody, the so-called media, is when they ask those types of questions, they didn't write the story. So it's the nuclear industry that writes almost all the nuclear stories, the lobbying groups. Could coal communities shift to nuclear? This is absurd, by the way. This is AP. AP has around 1,900 medias that use spider bots. And so the spider bots will aggregate that story at the exact, within 1 minute, 1,800, 1,900 medias will grab that story through spider bots. So people worldwide get the same picture with the same paragraphs, the same authors at the same time worldwide. And it's always pro-industry, whatever it might be. Yeah, there was some bad news with an economic bill that came out a few days ago. It's headed to the president. It has game-changing incentives for nuclear energy and tax credits that are way substantial. And so nuclear will start, because of these tax credits, the price per megawatt is going to be, just because they're getting a bailout constantly, will be way competitive compared to any other sources. So the industry has finally got people in the right position. Quoting Bill Gates, who's going to use mixed oxide fuel. These are crazies, eh? New scale. So we see that's over and over. TerraPower and NuScale, whose fuel actually depends upon Russia. And that pipe dream is gone. Ukraine warns of fresh Russian... We covered that already. NAN representatives say no to nuclear fuel waste. This is the natives in Canada, I think. Yeah, deep geological repositories. If you're not familiar with that, go back and watch the first part of the presentation last night, where I talk about the Nuclear Waste Management Organization here in Canada. Just watch that first bit, and you'll get the picture of how evil that organization. By rights, see, if I had funding, I would set up an office right alongside of them. Because that's a public information office they put in these communities, and people can wander in off the street and get propaganda. And they also reach out to all the schools from there and that, right? And throw money at them, and then get the schools to give the students propaganda to bring home. So they really, one thing about the nuclear industry is they hate the natives. It's unbelievable how they hate the natives. The natives in these places should be contacting me. 709-589-4406. And so everything that they're going to ship is vented into the communities. When they get to the site, everything is repackaged, means everything is vented into the community. We're talking absurd amount of radiation escaping into the environment for 46 years. Nothing says evil like nuclear. Hello, Michigan. No, I'm not getting one if I can avoid it. You want to go live? Because I'm live. Yeah, go ahead now.
Alright, anyways, you didn't get a 5G phone yet.
No intentions, because did you get some bad news about them?
Well, I had the other one, and, it bugged out, so the only thing they had was the 5G phone, right?
Yep.
Now, we know that, like, microwave radiation is different than ionizing radiation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I set my survey meter, which is like a little different than a Geiger counter. It picks up a little more. But it set it off. Now, microwave is different than ionizing. It did set it off.
Do you know?
So
I'll just cut you off for 1 second. I had studies quite a few years back showing that radio frequencies, certain frequencies, would excite isotopes that were airborne or wherever, would make them really more energetic. Go ahead.
But I have an EMF meter too.
Right. Which
So
measures those
the
waves.
signals are stronger. The signals are stronger with the EMF meter because I have to go by like microwave towers and all this other stuff, so I have to be careful with everything.
Right.
Right? So I have all this stuff, but what I noticed about this new 5G that I've had over the past couple of weeks is that everything's stronger out of it.
Wow. And because
But I never set the survey meter or what's similar to a Geiger counter by my old phone.
wouldn't do that. Wow.
Yeah, but the EMF meter would always go off. Even if by the Bluetooth. Right. The EMF meter, it would raise it. Now, so everybody's clear, the so-called safe limit is about 1,000 megahertz.
Right.
When I get by these cell phone towers, when I'm like in tall places on buildings or whatever, it would go up 70, 80,000 megahertz.
Wow,
right?
holy cow.
So I say, oh yeah, it's like cook your stuff.
Right, and
It's like your microwave.
I got studies where like trees only grow on one side around these towers.
Yeah.
And insects can't be found anywhere within a certain distance of these places.
Yep, but if you ever end up being forced to get a 5G phone, I know you have a good what is that brand of Geiger counter you have?
Inspector.
Yeah, put it by that.
I'll try it, yeah.
But
I don't have one, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But if you know somebody that has one, it has to be made out of those materials to set the Geiger counter off.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, ionizing radiation. Yeah. It has to be made out of those materials that's derived from uranium, all the daughters,
right,
and every element that's created that never existed.
Right, these man-made. Have you been loading up your spectrometer lately, or?
No, I'm gonna.
That's enough scaring yourself, is it?
You know what, though? I take that back. Remember, there was it might have been weeks or a few months back, he was talking about americium-241.
Right. Which is your smoke detectors, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've set those under that, and I actually can calibrate that spectrometer
with a smoke detector. That's scary, man.
Well, now, do you still have the photos I sent you?
I do, yeah.
Right, now, if you don't have them, I'll send them to you again.
I have them, yeah.
Okay, but you can put those on your show.
Okay, yeah.
Those are just screenshots, but you'll see the isolated places. The two colored ones are the two spikes from the cesium-137, but that one close to the left spike, that tall black one, is actually americium-241.
Send them again. That way it's easier for me to find them, right? Because you know what kind of collection I got. I can hit 600 a day, right? So I got such an archive. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what that is. And that's in our food. That's in your rainwater.
Oh, it is. No, 100%, yeah. Well,
I know. I'm the guy testing it. I've been doing it for years.
Yeah, no, because you've called it lots and lots and lots over the years, right? And just shocking numbers over the years. You should set up after the next major earthquake in Japan, set up for like 2 weeks and see what happens.
Yeah, now, was there any confirmation on that thing that happened over in Ukraine? Because they had that huge power plant?
Right, I'm just covering a little bit of it right now, but no, I don't have... I have no confirmation so far, no.
Right, because there's a lot of propaganda that goes out. And, right?
Yeah. I'm here every night for 2 hours.
The Russians are the bad guys, and they blew up the power plant, or they mismanaged it, or
they're reckless, right? They're the military. They're completely reckless, There's no restraint whatsoever. Yeah.
So,
good
when
idea.
they say these things, I'm thinking, okay, are the Russians going to go over there in Ukraine and mismanage a power plant and mess everything up that bad? Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
there's a lot of people in the Russian army want to kill, right? So there's a lot of trigger-happy colonels and lieutenants out there and captains, and you're in a war zone surrounded by the nuclear plants. You cut off the external power, right, and everything goes out pretty quick. So I'm waiting for the meltdown. As far as I'm concerned, it's coming, right? For sure. I don't know when, but probably not very long. I'm waiting for it to happen.
Well, even if they want to run them good, they can't. Japan was the proof. I'm sitting here years measuring this stuff.
Yeah. Shocking numbers too.
Rainfall,
shocking numbers.
Every rainfall I've tested.
Yeah, this year you didn't show up. I recognize that too, right? You just can't. I said this year you didn't show up like normal in the summertime, spring and summer, right? And with numbers, I thought that was kind of odd because you've been doing it now for so many years, right?
I haven't ran it.
No, I just can't do it no more. I don't blame you.
They buried me. Yeah, with my job and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, when you do the things I do, they just grab you and bury you.
Yeah.
No vacations. You get sick. I hit some shit the other day. 103 temperature, working out in the hot sun. I mean, I just go to I drop.
Yeah, that's nasty. That's nasty weather to work in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about 103-degree temperature. I hit some mold, got poisoned.
Yeah, I bet.
And, I'm like one of these guys that doesn't die.
Just get sick, recover, and do it again.
But I'm gonna run that again. I gotta run that again. But
you're overdue. You're overdue to get some numbers to us, right? You're gonna have to call in one of these days.
I am.
Yeah, why not?
There's
right?
one other guy that let me on his show, and a lot of these other guys, and I'm tempted to say their names, but they don't get it.
No, there's no one out there being honest, right? That's the problem.
No, you are.
Yeah, I'm 100% all the time. On top of that, I'm very conscious that I'm not allowed to make a mistake, not even a Freudian slip, right? It gets used against me. Yeah.
I don't know if I am.
All you're doing numbers, right? And so
I have the instruments.
Well, you got
There's no guessing. There's no guessing. There's no hearsay. There's no theories. There's no hypotheticals. There's no nothing.
No, well, for the last number of years, your numbers are just what you would expect, right? And confirmation is a huge deal.
Yeah. From what you're saying and what I'm saying, it matches. And Kevin Blanche, I did get to him one time, and he's an honest guy.
Yeah, well, there's a few people out. There's not many, but there's a handful, I guess, 6 people or something like that. But they're not. No one's active like. I guess I am, but it's too bad, right? Is all I'm saying. I wish there was 20 or 30 or 40 people doing this, but they're not, right?
Yeah, and
it'd be cool.
They talk about carbon. Plant food.
Yeah.
Plant food isn't going to destroy the planet. You know what I mean? They're talking about plant food destroying the planet. And then we got nuclear waste pouring into the ocean, millions of pounds.
Nuclear waste is like potato chips and walking in the sunshine. Carbon, which you gotta have, is like gonna kill everything. Yeah,
Car exhaust or cow farts. You know what?
Yeah, cow farts. Yeah, that's pretty. Next thing you ought to be shooting all the moose because they're out in the woods farting, right? Yeah, it's just like.
Yeah, moose are good. I haven't eaten them yet, but deer and ducks and
But you know what I'm saying? They're lunatics. I covered one story where a scientist was demonizing caterpillars because they were eating the leaves on a tree, and we needed trees, right? Or leaves on plants, and we need plants. And they were actually calculating how much they were contributing to global warming. My God, boy. And I blasted them.
Yeah, there's a natural balance,
Exactly.
There's supposed to be a natural balance. Bugs eat plants. Birds eat bugs.
Yeah.
Whatever. Now they're talking about us eating bugs when there's plenty of land for us to eat, like cows. I like cows.
I go through insects.
Broccoli.
I go through the insects headlines every second day or so, and half of it is insects for food. It's really something over the last 3 years how much they've been promoting
I've seen the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the difference with the bugs. I'm not seeing the bugs.
No, not at all. No.
I'm not hearing the birds sing.
No, that's right out in there. Yeah. Once you get out of the city, it's very difficult to find them.
Yeah,
it's weird,
I have a couple of birds singing, and that's about it.
The birds I see in the communities are what I call residential birds, and there's not a lot, but there's some. But once you get out in Mother Nature, it's like this winter. I went out every chance I could, deep into the woods, and over the whole winter I counted 14 birds total. And I mean that freaks me out. That kind of stuff. That I can't ignore that, right? That freaks me out.
I can't either. When I was a kid, like the birds, the flocks.
Yeah.
Like the blackbirds.
Yeah, you would see flocks of birds flying.
Ducks, geese. You would sit there and you would watch these flocks go for miles.
That's right.
I mean, just literally. There would be a stream of birds, literally,
that's
over
right.
your head, and you would sit there and watch them for miles. Like a train. You watch a train go by for a mile. These things would go by longer than that when I was a kid.
Well, when I was a kid, because I'm in the biggest migratory area on the planet, and for 4 days, the birds would almost block out the sun. For 4 days, birds would land on your boat all day long. It was just absurd. Millions and millions and millions of birds in every direction. And we see that for 4 days straight, the migratory heading north, heading towards the Arctic, I guess, right? But there's no way, every year you would look forward to that 4 days. It was really, because I grew up, we were fishermen. I grew up in a community still has no automobiles, and 400 years of fishing on the open Atlantic and North Atlantic Ocean. And so there was these keystone points each year that you would look forward to. And in October, at the beginning of November, we would get around 8 to 20,000 pilot whales would come right through our area. On November the 5th, typically, right? Guy Fawkes Day, and and they were chasing squid, right? And so these points each year you would wait for those points, and I haven't in the last number of years I haven't seen a single flock of birds. I think it's probably 6 years, 7 years or something. I haven't seen a single flock of birds, and that tells me
I haven't seen them either.
No.
I haven't seen them either.
No, that's right. No, you won't. Well, you can't.
A couple of birds on a telephone wire.
Right. In the communities.
That's about it.
In the communities, you'll see some, but not out in the wild, not the migratory, right? And okay, well, listen, I'm going to let you go, and
okay.
Next time you do,
I'll make sure I run that instrument again.
Yeah, run some numbers and see what we come up with. Call in. Okay, my friend. Anything else you want to throw out there?
God bless.
God bless, my
keep
friend.
Keep going.
Thank you.
Keep going, my friend.
Yeah,
right.
well,
Bye.
I will. You bet. Thank you now. Yeah, so he does a lot of samples of food and supermarkets and rain, and he's got numbers and he's got the equipment. I see a few people there donating. Thank you, folks. I had to set that up in order to be able to sell T-shirts under my video. So I don't really expect people to use it, and I never, I know years ago I used to do it, right, and scatter people. Well, it kind of caught me off guard when I seen somebody actually donate it. I don't know why, but it caught me off guard, so I appreciate it. Nuclear to be branded green to lure investors. Treasury may classify reactors as eco-friendly to win pension funds. So the nuclear industry, again, going after pension funds. That should just roil everybody. But this, we've seen them do this many, many times where they go after, specifically mention pension funds, which is despicable to steal people's pension funds. It's a despicable, incredibly despicable thing to do. And because European Union already classifies nuclear power erroneously, by the way, as environmentally friendly, it's an absurd. They won the vote by a very small margin on top of that, and there shouldn't have been. There's no reason for them to win that particular vote because you can't actually prove nuclear is green, and they were under criticism from the but they're going to brand green to lure investors in the United Kingdom. And the Treasury is going to classify reactors in the United Kingdom as eco-friendly. And Sizewell C, of course, so when you look at Sizewell C, it's actually, and they show it to you, and I went out and got you a better picture, surrounded by farms. It's so evil because their fuel pools are going to hemorrhage radiation constantly into the environment. It's absurdness in every direction. Nuclear energy and wind power, France's alien nuclear industry. Like you say, France got over half of its fleet shut down just from corrosion. It's got 6 reactors shut down because of a heat wave that's going to last at least another month. Some plants got an exemption so that all the creatures in those rivers will die because they heat up these rivers. Ukraine targets Russians. Ukraine allegedly is using snipers to kill Russians around the nuclear power plant. You know, that's going to get ugly. Remember the New Hampshire, what is it? I got the name right on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the name of the plant. Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant, thank you. In that story, so what happened was 12 sirens also work as just speakers. And they had put out a warning in real time on the speakers. And it wasn't a rehearsed, it was somebody was stuttering, saying you need to leave the beaches, we've had a release of radioactive material. And we know how this plays out, right? That'll get redacted and pretend nothing happened, right? And the non-regulatory agencies will gladly participate in covering it up. U.S. Secretary of Energy visits Hanford nuclear plant. She wasn't going to any of the places where you need a Scotty backpack, I bet you. And by visiting it doesn't make her an expert. The site is 585 square miles. It's a legacy nuclear waste site. It has contaminated untold millions downriver, the Columbian River. There's a place there, not too far from that nuclear power plant at Hanford. On the side of the river, it's 70 sieverts per hour. So if you're on your speedboat and you're drifting past it, you'll probably die that day or that week. They have 43 miles of unlined trenches at Hanford where they dump legacy nuclear liquids into the soils. They purposely dump billions and billions and billions of gallons in the 50s and 60s directly into the soil on a downhill slope towards the Columbian River, which is drinking water for millions of people downstream. We see a lot of the Guardian and the British media in particular claiming of nuclear threats over just absurd stuff. Twitter spats become threats of nuclear wars. United Kingdom's media is it's mind-boggling how evil they actually are. And because we have such a long legacy of their evilness, Center for Nuclear Medicine inaugurates radiation therapy machine. Allows the doctors to deliver high doses, many sieverts, to a specific area of the body. It's like a bullet wound to the body, right? This is basically what they're doing with radiation. Radiation can't cure you. If it can cure you, then nobody would die from chemotherapy. Instead, 98% of the people that get chemotherapy will die from it. 3% is the typical misdiagnosis, and that's the typical survival rate. But, your quality of life is not diminished, it's destroyed immediately. And then the studies were saying, you're better off not taking it, period. You have a 50% better chance of survival. Well, you have a survival chance. If you take it, you have infested your body with nuclear waste. I have done presentations just on that with nuclear, with studies, radiation injury studies. It's a terrible thing to do to anybody, let alone everybody. 2 violations found by the non-regulatory agencies. Yeah, right, as if they found it. They didn't find it. This was reported. They went and reported on it. 2 severity level 4 violations that are identified by the non-regulatory agencies at the Nuclear Fuel Services Facility in Irwin. Nuclear Fuel Service Facilities. They process weapons-grade uranium and nuclear fuel. We covered that last week, didn't we? They also produce reactor fuel for Navy ships and commercial domestic operations. They're disease factories in overdrive, in other words. Because you can't reprocess. This is mixed oxide fuel they're talking about, which is supposed to be illegal in the United States. In order to create it, you've got to release an absurd amount of radiation into the environment because you're boiling the fuel rods at 3,000 degree temperatures in acid. You can't contain it, see? And the studies around La Hague in France and Donneray in UK and Sellafield in UK, these are reprocessing facilities also. It shows you can't contain it. In fact, those facilities are considered responsible for contaminating the Arctic. They had a fire in the non-regulatory agency's licensed material, which is radiation. You can't burn radioactive materials without a release, which they claimed there was no releases. There was 2 radiation incidences investigated at a hospital. And the non-regulatory agencies has a loophole for the hospitals. I'm not even going to bother. But see, like when you inject radiation, whether it's into the vein or into the muscle, that's an assault. It's not illegal to poison you with radiation. That's why they're allowed to do it. The parliaments like Canada and Britain and Congress in the United States don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with man-made anthropogenic radiation. It's not illegal, right? Nuclear power was already stigmatized. Heat waves are shutting down France's plants and making it worse. Well, why would you build more nuclear plants in a country where you don't have enough water to keep them cool? If that's not the definition of stupid, what actually is? Ex-TEPCO executives appeal $95 billion damage ruling over Fukushima. So instead of TEPCO got to pay back, just 4 executives got to pay the money. Because they're on the stock market, so you can't put them in jail. And you're not going to try to put these guys in jail. They can't pay $95 billion, right? But the blame is put on them instead of the corporation. But it really should be, because the nuclear industry regulates it, so the blame should go to the non-regulatory agencies, right? The IAEA ultimately should be blamed for it, and then they should be dissolved, and their assets should be sold off, and then the money should be used to pay restitution and to do repairs. See? That's what normally would happen, but because they're such big companies, there's no accountability, which means there's no incentive not to be evil. The company aims to power the world for millions of years by digging the deepest holes. So, a nuclear power plant is $15 to $30 billion, right? So instead of doing that, if you took $1 billion and just went down and tapped into geothermal, you produce the same heat as you could with the nuclear. And you could do it for 1 million years. So why would you spend all that money on a nuclear when you can do it much cheaper by just drilling down into the earth and tapping into geothermal? Once you get to 1,000-degree temperatures, you can repurpose gas, oil, coal, nuclear plants. Just get rid of the gas, oil, and coal, keep the infrastructure, see? France to increase monitoring of nuclear reactors to ensure winter energy supply. Well, like the corrosion they got going on there is a several-year job to fix it. But these reactors now, after running for decades, are brittle from the neutron bombardment. Like everything they do, all they're going to end up doing is digging a hole and falling into it. Because they refuse to come up with solutions. For over the last decade, they knew this was running at them. They just kept giving everything extensions rather than coming up with solutions, because the nuclear industry is so powerful. Every time it shows up in the country, it chokes the daylights out of the country, and the country can't survive because it has the nuclear industry. And they demand, they take over everything, all your governments, they'll take over all your universities, they take over all your medias, and so you have a dysfunctional country now. You can't fix it without getting rid of all of them. And they're in positions of authority. They're not going to get rid of themselves, right? They're the true plague. They infest you with poisons. They're disease factories, and the people that work in it are just unconscionable monsters. That's a good article. You should read it there. Global energy crisis can't be resolved without nuclear, without uranium. Like, this is ludicrous assertions, but this is absurdness. There's evil, and then there's nuclear. I'm sorry, there's nuclear, then there's evil. Evil can't compete with nuclear. Germany considers reversing decisions to close nuclear power plants. For the last week, they've been claiming that Germany is not going to close them. But today, multiple headlines are showing up saying Germany didn't make up their minds. They're saying it, but they didn't bother asking Germany what they thought. They're lunatics. We'll call it a night, I guess. Nuclear waste storage facing lawsuits. That's the right words. Fukushima is like eating a banana, and walking in sunshine, and flying on an airplane. You can buy T-shirts and mugs in the links below of that, right? Because this is your problem worldwide in nuclear countries. That's what your media looks like. And they're ruthless. They'll destroy everybody for their paycheck each Friday. They, the my high pressure washer, they canceled the order. They don't want to ship to here. It takes 5 days for that to go back on my card before I can order another one. That's disappointing. The parts for my truck never showed up like they were supposed to yesterday or today. So I guess they'll show up tomorrow. Tomorrow we're supposed to have rain each day, so I'll be soaking wet trying to install that. I'm going to have to install that myself. And I think I can do it. I'll try it tomorrow. I still got to get a front end alignment, right? But because we lost summer research. Today again, I'm tempted to head out on a research expedition this weekend, right? If I can get everything to work. On the flip side, we got mass bird die-offs going on down here. I should be out doing that one. That costs us quite a bit of money. So I might have to do a fundraiser. I don't know until I make, hopefully what I'm doing, because like the ball joint is moving 1.5 inches, right? That you can't, that's so dangerous, it's not funny. And so hopefully that's the last problem. Otherwise, I'm down for the season, which is just horrible. It's a horrible thought, right? Let's call it a night, I guess, but I'm heartbroken because we're losing all the species and haven't got the research done like we needed to get done. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm doing everything I can do. I can't keep up with anything, and so I got to accept some things, right? But the year's not over. I think I got all the equipment that I need to do it. And you just got to fuel it and fund it, and food is not that bad, right? So if I decide I'm going to do it, I'll probably make my mind up by Thursday whether we're going to do a research expedition. And if so, then the first Sunday we'll have to do a fundraiser if that's the case. But I don't know if I can make up my mind that quick because there's so many factors we got to... Ideally, want to put the boat in the water and get out and see the die-offs of the dead birds. There's something else I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember. That's it for tonight anyway. Let's check the poll, maybe. Let's get me back on track here. Did the Japan Times commit a crime asking seniors to eat the radioactive rice to protect the young? We got 100% of people said, yeah, 100%, that's a crime. A terrible crime. A horrific betrayal. An insidious betrayal for the Japan Times. And they put the number of the distributor at the bottom of that story. They took that off their main page, but I have it for posterity's sakes. Good night, everybody. We'll be back again tomorrow night. Because the industry is so evil. It's so evil. We can't... You know, like the hardest thing to do about all of this is to show up every night on time. Year after year I've been doing this. I'm rarely, it's extraordinarily unusual for me to be early or late, right? It's extremely rare for me to show up late. Once or twice a year, I might be a few minutes late. And that's because that shows you how important this story is, see? I no matter what, I sacrifice everything to make sure I'm going to be here to butt heads with the industry each night and to try to enlighten those who are seeking it of the harm, danger that we're in, because somebody has to do that, right? And it has to be done right. I'm not allowed to make a mistake, and that's a heavy burden, you know. And it is what it is. That's the cards that I drew, and I'm happy. I got no issues with it. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. There's links at the bottom of the description if somebody wants to, a few people wants to help out. That's how you can do it. There's only 2 ways you can donate to me. They're both at the very bottom of the description. PayPal, and at my site. At my site, you can put almost any card in there, and it'll probably accept it. I got a whole list of different cards, everything from Google cards, you name it, PayPal, or all kinds of cards from all kinds of countries. There's a big list of them. There's more than that, but I put a pretty good list of the cards that my site will take. It'll take just about any card. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you made it this far. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody in just a little bit. Take care, folks.